You're listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you from the kitchen studios located high atop the historic Raleigh building, located in the heart of downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B Podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBPod. And now, the sommeliers to the stars, the barbacks in your backyard. It is Max and Matt.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today in studio, we have a dynamic duo that is the creative and driving force of Durham, North Carolina, Mr. Nick Johnson and Mrs. Rochelle Johnson, who are the co-owners, co-creators of many things that you know and love, like Saurus Brewing, the Cookery, and Dashi. That was a mouthful. Welcome, you guys. I don't know how, it's hard to say it. I don't know how you do it.
And now Tsum Tsum Pita Pockets.
And Tsum Tsum Pita Pocket, yeah.
You just can't be stopped.
Well, one of us can't be.
Yeah.
And that's not you, Rochelle? Is that it?
It is not me.
You like taking a break every now and then.
I do. I like breathing every once in a while.
It's a little overrated.
Letting the grass grow a little bit. Max and I were talking about that this morning, and I feel like you guys meeting was a match made in heaven, so to speak. Like, Nick, I mean, you're both very creative, and I think you can both probably work both sides of the brain, but it seems like Nick has all these creative energy and this drive to do stuff, and you are like built for the corporate world but don't want to be in the corporate world, and so can take his ideas and then, boom, implement them.
We describe it that Nick is the balloon, and I'm the person holding him to the ground.
You're tethering. Yeah.
That's a kind way to put it. I would say that nobody would take anything I said seriously if Rochelle didn't translate it into, like, real
She puts it into, like, people speak, and you have Nick
Everybody
speak.
be like, that guy is so full of it. But then they're like, oh, wow, Rochelle really polished that up.
Yeah. What she said,
Well, I have to say, not that this was like a fan poll decision to have you on. We've been wanting to have you on for a while, but it has been alarmingly evident that most people we've talked to have said so many times, why don't you have... You know, it's funny, they didn't say it by your names, but why don't you have the folks over at the Cookery on? Or why don't you get the folks over at Saurus on? Or you should have Dashi on. And at some point it's like, well, that's kind of all one group. I mean, granted, there are many players that play into it, and we'll get into that too. But you are at the epicenter of those things, and now the food truck as well. But it's come up a lot over the last year and a half, 2 years we've been doing the podcast. It's like, yeah, we need to have them in. And in finding out what you do, I mean, you guys are like serial entrepreneurs, and you're doing so many fun things that you're kind of like the embodiment as a couple of like the food scene in North Carolina, which is pretty cool. So it's now just tell us everything you do.
Yeah, go. No. I think we should start off with Saurus and talk a little bit about the evolution of that and where that came from. I'll start you guys off by, I know that it originated out of the Cookery, which you already had going, so we're skipping ahead a bit in the story, but let's take it from there and why you thought the need to make a brewery happen.
Well, so Saurus started in the Cookery, and it started kind of from through some mutual friends. We met Kyle Jansen, who's our partner there, and was the original brewmaster. And, you know, people are like, hey, try my home brew. And you kind of like brace yourself to not make a face. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right.
And, but like we met and he said, hey, try my home brew. And I tried it. And we kind of hung out a lot of backyard parties together, and Kyle would show up with beer all the time, and I was like, this stuff is really good. And so we started talking, and at some point, I kind of said, I think we could sell this beer. Like, what do you think?
Like in a real store.
Like, it's really good. And so we started kind of plotting to build a little tiny brewery into the Cookery. And we did, in this little ridiculous tiny room, probably about as big as this studio.
Well, this studio is huge. People can't see it on,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it's lower ceilings than the studio.
Right,
But,
gotcha.
And not all the gold gilding work.
Oh, yeah.
Well, gold equals excellence, as we've heard by our president, so that's perfect.
So Pony Saurus lived at the Cookery for about a year and a half, and we didn't really intend to move as quickly as we did, but because we ended up opening Dashi and Pony Saurus both in 2015, which was a whole lot. But we found the space for Pony Saurus where it is now, and it was so perfect that we couldn't say no to it.
Yeah.
And we also couldn't kind of sit and carry the cost of it, so we had to just go.
Yeah.
And
But it's all grown up now, which is kind of amazing.
I'm glad it looks that way from the outside.
It's amazing that it's only 2015. I had the impression that it started a lot earlier than that.
We started it in the Cookery in 2013.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we began building out the current brewery in late 2014, early 2015, and opened in October of 2015 in our new space.
I remember when you guys were first on the scene, you participated in the World Beer Festival that happened downtown, and I was working at Midtown Grill at the time, and we participated as the food entry. We had a little table. I think we did a smoked trout salad that day. It was delicious. But your team was also in the VIP section of where we were, and my bar manager was a massive fan of your product, and I had yet to know who you were. This was like the beginning of 2014, so you had just really gotten underway. This may have been one of your first public ventures at that time.
It was, yeah. We unloaded all that beer out of the back of a trunk of a car.
Yeah, and we tried your IPA, I believe, and we tried your Rye Saison. I believe those were the two that you had at the time. And I loved it, and he loved it. And he's like, dude, we got to get this on tap. And whomever was behind, I don't believe it was you, Nick, but whoever was there, they're like, yeah, not so fast. And I went, what? They go, well, we're really small and don't have a lot of product at this point. But when we get there, and so we had basically maybe 7 or 8 times throughout the next year just contacted, you guys ready for us yet? Can we get your beer yet? And we're trying to get there, but we kind of can't meet the demand of even the few restaurants we're already selling to and just what we're doing. So it's nice to see that you've been able to expand and do it. But from the beginning, I remember walking into Pools shortly thereafter, and I saw Pony Saurus on tap, and I went, oh, well, of course Ashley gets Pony Saurus. Of course she gets it. Little old Max don't get any of that beer. But that's been great, and I think that's been a great community driving point right there, too, is that you've been able to work well in the community with some great leaders of the industry in helping to promote what you do. And Ashley's a pretty good spot to start.
Yeah,
pretty good. Yeah. And I don't want to glaze over, too, David Baldwin is the other partner who David owns Baldwin and here in Raleigh.
Yeah. And so how were you able to go... 2013, you're making beer. There are very few people making beer in Durham. Full steam, of course. We talked about before we got on the mics. There are very few breweries just in general in Durham, for one. And so especially then, you were one of 4, I believe, at that very time, and give or take. But basically...
No, I think that's right.
Yeah. And so, what made you think, we can do this here, and why should we be able to make a brewery in this area?
Overconfident foolishness, maybe?
Excellent answer.
And I think Pony Saurus is a great example of what the Cookery was originally built for, is incubating businesses until they get a grassroots following, and then they grow so large that they're bursting out of the building, and they can move on from there.
Yeah, you guys were already set up to kind of facilitate these thoughts and great ideas and creative forces into actual businesses because you had done it a couple before with opening the Cookery. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, which Max and I were also talking about, is Nick, you are a general contractor. So that helps a lot when you're building out restaurants or breweries and stuff like that.
And between the two of you, so you're a general contractor, but Rochelle, you're also a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. And so you guys were able to build the brick and mortar and physically make it look and visually make it look beautiful as well. So people coming into the Cookery realized that they had a team that could effectively take their dreams to fruition. It's a pretty amazing start, and such an important key factor of just having that skill set that most people, when they're starting a new business, don't have. You know, like, oh yeah, we don't normally just be able to start and do.
I think that's the most intimidating thing when you're starting a brick and mortar is having build out and then not knowing anything about architectural stuff and engineering, and people are taking hammers and swinging them around and doing demo, and it's like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, Nick has gone with several members to look at different spaces and just give advice and his 2 cents on making sure that people aren't going to just like fall in the hole of, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars of build out. That's a lot of risk.
I always feel like, no offense, but growing up, the general contractors were always like screwing my parents whenever we did anything, any work to the house.
A shady
or like,
bunch.
Yeah, but and to be fair, they're usually like Eastern Europeans or like coming from another country, and there was a language barrier, and there was always like, okay, what's going on? You know, why are you trying to pull the wool over us? But yeah, so when you have that in house. I'm not making a comment about Eastern Europeans. I feel your stare.
Eastern European part coming from?
Matt,
like,
you're Eastern European.
No, I realize that.
Your
but
family is
Eastern
European.
I bring that up not because they were from Eastern Europe. I bring that up because there was a language barrier. So it felt a lot more confusing and intimidating to begin with.
I think he's involved in the mob.
Yeah.
This is where it happens, folks. Matt's going to show all of his racist tendencies in this episode. I'm just kidding.
I feel like I prefaced that very politically correctly. Nothing
I
to
didn't
do
know
with
where
their
it was
origin. It had
going.
to do with language barriers.
Got it.
Okay. Anyway, off the general contracting thing. So let's talk about the beer for a second. The beer of Saurus. So 2 things. One, you started out as Belgian ales and American ales, right? And now that has... where is that now with Saurus, and kind of what's the driving forces behind it? Beer-wise.
You know, that's mostly still what we do.
Okay.
You know, we do some German styles. We do some Belgian styles. We brew pretty traditional beer. We don't do a lot. I mean, occasionally we'll do something wacky, but like we don't put a lot of stuff in our beer. There's a reason that these, you know, time-honored traditions of styles have occurred because they're delicious.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to make really well-crafted, well-balanced expressions of those traditional styles of beer that are drinkable and that honor kind of the traditions that those styles came out of.
Yeah. We hear the rage and the new trend is going to be going back to lagers. Is there a lager in the works?
We make a Pilsner.
Okay.
There's a constant argument over the limited amount of tank space that we have because making lagers takes like twice as long as making
that's right.
ales. So, but we're getting ready to can our Pilsner, and it'll be the first of our core beers that's going to be in a 12-ounce can. So
Okay, yeah, because normally you're in a 16, right?
most of our beers are in tall boys, yeah.
These are going to be the crushable summer.
That's it.
Summer beer, session beer.
Pack your
right?
fridge with them, and you'll get to see the new can design. I pull it up for you later and show it to you. We're really excited about it. It's
cool.
Kind of a whole new direction for our cans, kind of holding on to the goofy traditional sort of mashup that, as David likes to put it, of like kind of old pub sign traditional design with the silliness that kind of embodies sort of most of what we do,
Sure.
most of what we are.
The light whimsy. Now, Rochelle, are you doing the designs? Is that your package design?
Baldwin Ann made the original branding, and then I do everything else with it. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Very cool. So, like, so even the Be Kind to People beer, that was your...
Don't be mean to people.
Don't be mean to people.
Yeah.
The Don't Be Mean to People.
That was
The Don't Be
designed
Mean
by
to People
Baldwin
beer.
and then I take those design elements and then
extrapolate.
riff on them. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And that obviously was in conjunction with HB2, and it was really, coming from California, Matt coming from New York, it's like we are going to the state with the intent of saying, this is a pretty progressive state. I know that it's had its history, it's had its problems in the past, but it seems like it's on the up and up, and then boom, smacked us in the face with the good old HB2.
Yeah.
And so it was great to see that you, along with, I think it was like 40 brewers, all kind of came together to make a stance or make a statement in the community and be nice to people.
Just don't be mean.
Don't be mean.
Just don't be mean.
Really simple.
Yeah. As Ashley says, don't forget kindness.
That's right.
And that's been the coolest part that has come out of the tap room, I think, more than I ever expected, is we've created the tap room is its own community. And so a lot of our programming now is revolving around how can we get more people meeting each other and connecting in a way that's off of their phones and off of technology and a little bit more engaged. So I feel like it's really strong.
Are there any specific things that you can examples that happen at the tap room?
Yeah, we're about to develop a book club. We're partnering with the Regulator in Durham, and so
books. What are those?
Yeah. So every month there will be a new book, and there will be a pop-up bookshop, and the Regulator will send out MCs who will host the conversation. We have a
What
really
is the Regulator?
It's a bookstore in Durham.
It's like that's right on Main Street.
One of the older.
Oh yeah. Okay,
on 9th Street,
the oldest.
Oh, it's on 9th Street.
Yeah, 9th Street.
Because I know that there's the one right on Main Street that sells like old stuff, but has a lot of books. Also, I didn't know the one on 9th Street. But
we have a really strong pony run. We have a pony ride for cyclists.
Well, aren't you doing your grilling? You give the ability to grill at Pony Saurus, right? That's and how's that done? It's like you do almost get like a basket or so. How does that work?
You can go online. We haven't fired it up yet this year, but in the warmer months, you can go online, order your food, set it all up, everything that you're going to need is portioned out, and then pick your time to reserve a grill. When you show up, everything's ready for you in a cooler by the grill. Our guys bring out coals.
So cool.
You kind of get to do the
awesome.
grilling part without the prep and the cleanup.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's going to even get I'm sure it's already busy, but with all the apartment housing going into Durham and people don't get to cook outside, that's going to be a huge thing.
Yeah, it took like 3 years for people to you describe it, and people would kind of scratch their head and be like, "Wait, what?"
Sure. Yeah, it still seems new to me. It doesn't seem like my bachelor party in San Diego. We went to a place where you grill your own steaks. It's the strip club, but it's literally it's like the New York strip club, and you throw steaks on there. It's kind of interesting that on my bachelor party I went to a strip club and there were no naked women at all. It was just a bunch of meat for that matter.
It was a strip club. We in Vail, Colorado, we used to go. There's a place called the Minturn Inn, which was like a butcher's market, but they cut all the meat for you. You pick it, and then you go on the grill. And then I was like, love to make the Seinfeld jokes. It's like, why am I paying you to cook the meat? I'm sure there's something
good.
Yeah.
Wow, Matt, you have a new career ahead of you. I love it. All right, let's shift into. You open the Cookery. And the Cookery is this incubator, as you said, a culinary incubator. But was this your first realm into the food and beverage world, or why did you feel that, with your design background, with your contracting background, why did you feel like you needed to get into the arts, the culinary arts?
Let's just throw an acupuncture in the background too.
Oh yeah, nobody knows about that.
Oh really?
I don't think so.
Will you put some pins in my head?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Did you bring your kit?
No, I brought a waiver.
Oh, okay.
Well, I got kicked out of high school in the last term of my senior year, out of Friend School in Durham. Those
behavior? Is this
intolerant Quakers is what I would chalk it up to.
Interesting. Okay.
Second time you had gotten kicked out, right?
Yes, I was kicked out of Friend School twice. Maybe the only person.
Wow.
It's a badge of honor.
And so I started working in restaurants, and kind of all my friends went to college, and I just worked in restaurants and construction, and never could come up with a good reason to go to school, except everybody else was doing it, which seemed like a questionable reason.
I hear you.
And so those were kind of what I did. Worked in restaurants.
What restaurants did you work in at the time? Like chain restaurants or local greasy foods?
I was a corporate trainer for On the Border, which is a Brinker restaurant. I worked at Bahama Breeze here in Raleigh.
Starting at high school, you're like, let's take it way back.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, Max did ask him where his culinary background came from. So.
Like let me start from birth.
Let me just tell you how
I was born.
I was a young child.
First food I ever ate, green beans.
I used to
pureed.
like cookies.
But Rochelle, how did you just let him convince you that opening up this culinary incubator was a good idea?
Yes.
And you were totally fine with this.
It usually starts, it was his project, and it soon became way more than just a one-person job. And so I had a small design firm, and
Right.
I realized I couldn't do both. We just needed to dive in order for it to succeed. And we were kind of...
Talk about a devoted wife.
Well,
oh, she's amazing. She's so patient. I was like, it's going to be easy. It'll basically run itself.
That's how every project starts. It's going to be easy.
Right. Yeah.
But, I mean, the cookery started just as the incubator the first year, and we really couldn't find a culinary incubator example that fit what we wanted to do. So we were really recreating a lot of systems from scratch, and that took a while.
I guess what the thought was, maybe Max, you were alluding to this, is what was the impetus for the incubator? Like, why did you feel? I know that previously it was a culinary destination, but it wasn't. It was like a catering space, essentially.
It used to be the old Durham Food Co-op for 20 years, and the cookery is in this beautiful brick historic building, and so everyone, it had multiple food lives before the co-op as well.
Okay.
But most people know it as the food co-op because they have memories of it, and you can see all of the murals on the outside of the building that reflect
Is it related to the Durham co-op that exists now?
It isn't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
that just
another
okay.
group.
You know, I just thought of something right now. The second day that I lived in Raleigh, I went to a wine event, and it's so random. It was the Country Vintners wine tasting group, which is who Matt works for now.
Yeah.
And it was at the Cookery.
And I was just going to say, we just had that
day before
2 days ago.
yesterday.
On Wednesday was there, and it was absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, good.
And a magnificent event. Yeah.
Yeah,
You had 2 outdoor spaces. The day was beautiful, and then you have the inside to cool off, and the space is gorgeous, and you would never think that vast.
Yes, yeah, and we just had an expansion last year, so
Okay.
the original building started as the front room, the kitchen, and the courtyard, and we expanded into a ballroom, a dressing suite, and a private garden. So now we have the capability to host very large events
like
that.
Joey's wedding, who's
Yeah.
a member of our kitchen this summer. Coming to you soon. Everybody, you're all invited.
That's going to be like on the back patio. There's 50 people, and then there's be another wine
Everybody
tasting
come.
going in.
4,000 people show up. Where's the food and beer? No.
But I don't want to lose this topic. So it was a food co-op. They were doing. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of. Maybe.
It was essentially a grocery store, and
okay.
Yeah, and Nick and his mom have a rental business, and so they purchased the building.
Bull City Restoration.
Yes. And it was Drew Brown was working for what is now called First Hand Foods.
Okay.
And
Great
he
company.
asked, this was at the very beginning of the food truck boom in Durham. And so food trucks were looking for places to cook, and there really wasn't anything else like that in Durham. So he said, "Oh, do you guys have a kitchen in that building?" And Nick got to thinking, and then started buying kitchen equipment, and it happened really quickly.
That's amazing. I think, people always say when you're trying to create a business is like find the need and then create the business as a solution to that,
Right.
which is exactly what you did.
Which is why we should take a quick moment to hear from our sponsors, the Forrest Firm, who are a legal team that helps small business in North Carolina sometimes and many times in the food and beverage industry. So we'll take a quick little break, and we'll come right back. Everybody has legal questions, especially in the food and beverage industry. So that's why we've provided the Forrest Firm to help us out. And if you follow us on Instagram at NCFB Pod, we'll put out a post weekly from Forrest Firm and ask a question. It might be the question that we ask on the show. Today, we have an attorney from the Forrest Firm, Kelly Ovius, who specializes in trademark law. So, hello, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, before we even turned these mics on, we started talking about one of the most important things about businesses when you're getting one started, naming the business? That is a question that so many people get themselves wrapped in. For one, how important is the name to a business?
Well, to me as a trademark attorney, of course, I'm a little biased, but I think it's very important. I mean, that is your brand. That is how you differentiate yourself from the crowd.
If you are in the naming process, what would be some of the simple steps that you would advise someone just right off the bat so you don't waste too much time?
Well, what I always advise my clients is try not to fall in love with a name before you do some trademark due diligence. Ideally, talk to a trademark attorney. But I know a lot of people don't want to spend that money, but there are things you can do on your own. Search the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office records. Do some keyword searching on search engines, because I have seen it many, many times that a client has run down the road with a name that they just love. And they come to find out there's somebody somewhere else who came up with the same name or a really similar name for the same or a similar business. And that's problematic from a trademark standpoint.
So how does it happen? Being that we're in North Carolina, does it differ from state to state? Like if I wanted to have Tony's Taco Tubes on Tuesday here in North Carolina, previous episode, but there's also a Tony's Taco Tubes in Arizona. Does that matter, or how does that affect the business?
I will use a trademark attorney or any attorney's favorite phrase, it depends. Under what's known as the common law of trademarks, those two businesses can coexist in their geographic areas because common law rights just extend to the localities that you serve. So if you're in Arizona and I'm in North Carolina and we're not expanding, we are where we are, we could coexist forever and it's fine. But let's say I'm opening my business in North Carolina, but you in Arizona have a federal trademark registration. Your federal trademark registration gives you priority throughout the United States. So if you already went and you got that registration and I'm starting up in North Carolina, even if you're not physically in North Carolina, it's still problematic for me because federal registration gives you rights throughout the country.
That's great to know. Thank you so much.
To learn more about the Forrest Firm and what they can do for you, click the link in our show notes. Or visit forrestfirm.com/NCFB to request a free consultation for your business. You can also reach them at 877-669-1455. Forrest Firm, business attorneys across North Carolina.
I mean, I think that part of what, Drew called me up and asked me if there was a kitchen in that building, and it was totally defunct and unusable. But, in that conversation and in talking about what it takes to open a restaurant, who are the folks that we know that are able to do that, and who are the folks that are talented and would really that people should be eating their food, and not all of those chefs have the resources to open their own restaurants. So often really talented people are working for wealthy restaurant owners who can fund the opening of a restaurant, and we wanted to provide access to the infrastructure that's needed to make and sell food directly to the talented folks, regardless of whether they have vast bank accounts, so that they can take their product to market, get feedback on it without betting the farm, pivot if they have to, and build a following that when they have moved out, like some of the folks that started with us at the Cookery, there are a bunch of places in Durham and brick and mortars now that employ a ton of people that started at the Cookery.
That's what I was going to say. Now this is the section where you get to brag about businesses that we know and love that
Your
possibly
babies.
started from the Cookery. Give us a couple, because there are a few that we'll all know.
Monuts Donuts, Big Spoon Roasters, Pie Pushers, Donovan's Dish,
Parlor Ice Cream,
Parlor,
Two Roosters Ice Cream.
Two Roosters.
And not that he has a brick and mortar, but Jacob Boehm, I believe,
Yeah.
works out at the Cookery and Snap the Underground.
Absolutely.
We love Jacob,
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And all of those folks really, like when you say our babies, they're not at all. They really, we provided them the space. And when we initially started, we thought, we'll have this whole entrepreneur program and training and socials. And then we realized everyone just wanted us to get the hell out of their way.
Sure.
Because they were all so busy working constantly.
That's not that different from parenting. I mean, you give the baby space and some food, and then like eventually they're going to grow up and do it and tell you to go F off.
Raising cats, I just put food and water in the corner and just let them.
Essentially, they're going to grow up to do their own thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of think of the cookery as being a way to, it certainly doesn't. None of it happens without a tremendous amount of work on the part of the folks that started all those businesses we just named and all the other ones that we haven't named. It's more like a way to give traction to someone whose wheels are already spinning, and they need something to bite into.
Yeah.
And,
well, you are part of what gives people in this area the ability to create the type of businesses that thrive in this town or in the state, because we know that national restaurants and big chains don't tend to fare very well out here. And maybe that's the case because most people want to just try something unique, and most people want to try something they can't get everywhere else. But most cities don't have a platform and an availability to do that. And it's really hard to open up in Chicago with your own, to buy your own square footage and, to buy your own brick and mortar for that sake. And you are this building block. You're the stepping stone to at least try it. And if you can get a food truck, which is a whole lot less expensive than getting a full restaurant, well, then you can at least cook at your cookery and get the commissary kitchen locked in. There was a way for them to instantly make money by using your services, enough to afford that balloon payment of getting their own place. And that's not a very common practice in most cities. And I applaud you guys for doing that, because it really helps the growth of entrepreneurial business. Whether you knew you were doing that at the time or not, you're doing it, and that's really cool.
Thank you.
Well, thanks.
So let's talk about some of the places that you also opened, right? So ramen? Mm-hmm. You got some ramen in Durham?
Yeah.
Dashi, yes.
Dashi. And then you opened that with the Cotters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Billy and Kelly.
Billy and Kelly, famed of Toast, which is just a block and a half away from where Dashi's located. And so how did that come to be? Was that wasn't a cookery inspiration that led, or was it?
It actually,
Yeah,
it was rooted from the cookery.
Okay.
We hosted a 3-night pop-up restaurant with the Cotters. Nick and I wanted to create these restaurants where we wanted to totally redesign the inside of the cookery, hire a staff, front of house, back of house, create a whole new drink menu, and provide this weird, cool restaurant experience. And we were drinking beers with Billy and Kelly, which is usually how ideas start. And we asked them, would you like to do the first one with us and pick whatever you want, Billy? And Billy said, well, I don't want to do Italian. Let's do something different. Let's do Japanese.
Yeah.
So,
well, that was a need, right? Because especially when Dashi started, which was about, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, I think, there really wasn't any ramen happening.
No. And what was just a fun project with them turned into, it sold out within 15 minutes. Our website crashed because so many people were trying to get reservations all at the same time. And so we realized, okay, so maybe Durham wants a Japanese restaurant, and we all have these complementary talents, and we work really well together, so why don't we do this for real? And that also happened fairly quickly. Super Bowl Sunday of 2013. Gosh, we're bad with timelines, but
that's fine. It was probably the Patriots for somebody. It's a good guess.
Yeah. So it's been great.
What was the secret originally? I mean, you just put out on social media that, hey, come to this pop-up restaurant that we're having.
Rochelle will be super, she'll downplay this, but she
brag
does
for her.
all of our marketing, and anywhere you see a presence of us online or that's all her. And so we came up with this scheme. Billy used to be the sous chef for many years at Lantern in Chapel Hill, which of course is Andrea Roosing, a wonderful Asian restaurant. He was also the sous chef at Magnolia Grill, so he's got an incredible pedigree that I don't think people really know about.
I don't think I knew that. That is
he's a heavy hitter.
Yeah,
and so we dreamed up this thing. He was going to do kaiseki inspired menu, and this was before pop-up was a thing, really. Like pop-up, people were like, "What's a pop-up?" And they're like, "Oh, I've read about it in the New York Times.
Yes.
And, they're doing it in Chicago." And,
Yeah.
and so we, like, Rochelle, like, put it out and pumped it up on social media, and we got together with the Cotters on Sunday morning when there really weren't really tickets, but the reservations would go available online, and we had coffee and some champagne, and we just hoped that some reservations were made. Like, we had no idea what to expect. And 10 o'clock struck, and the website completely crashed. And, like, the phones are ringing off the hook, and people are angrily tweeting and on Facebook about how they can't. Our personal phones are all ringing, and
Wow.
and me and Billy are like, woohoo, this is great. And Rochelle's pulling her hair out, like, I can't even get into the back end of the website. And yes, they sold out when the site came back up. Like Shell said, it was sold out in like 15 minutes, and
instantly you knew there was a market for this.
We were just like kind of shocked that there was then there were 600 people on the waiting list. I mean, it was so far exceeded our expectations.
Yeah. And so that was kind of a no-brainer then at that point, right? You're like, well, we're going to do this then.
Yeah,
I would assume.
The building we found downtown, we were originally just going to do ramen, and we chose ramen because it's an ultimate comfort food, and Southerners love comfort food, and that can be enjoyed by all sorts of people. But the building is a kind of a wonky 3-story building. We have a basement kitchen, a dumbwaiter that can bring food up to the first floor.
That's not a nice thing to say about
the guy. And second floor. So we and the Cotters love bars. We like sitting at the bar when we go to a restaurant. So we wanted the top floor to be bar focused, so we made it an izakaya.
Right. Which, that says like bar food, or like, that's essentially Japanese bar food. Right.
Yeah, small place. The word izakaya, so ya on the end of a word means like a place that does that thing. So a ramen ya is a ramen shop.
Oh, okay.
And so a sake ya is a sake shop. And I means to stay. So an izakaya is a sake shop where you can stay and drink your sake. And so like we serve small plates. They're very common. Like if you go to Tokyo, there's one on every corner. They're marked with red lanterns. They're a big part of the sort of
your neighborhood
culture, the late afternoon evening culture.
The only real line I know in Japanese is "biru no nimasu ka?" I think is like, will you have beer with me? Yeah, that's all I know. But I guess it was appropriate at this point.
Very useful, though.
Yeah, and now the izakaya has grown from, we did a lot of initial education about sake and shochu with the public, and now people have caught on to how awesome that is. But Gabe, the general manager at Dashi, has fully exploded the whiskey program.
Yeah.
And now we have
140 bottles.
I'd say.
Yeah, people. I mean, Japanese make fantastic whiskey. Governor Cooper, if you're listening, if you could get some more Japanese whiskey into the state of North Carolina,
or the ABC Commission. But I know that's a cool thing about it's a place where you can get things. I like that idea. And speaking of a place where you can get things like beer and wine, is our friends at the Triangle Wine Company, who don't have a location in Durham. You'd have to go to Morrisville; it would be the closest one. But they have 3 other ones in Cary. Also Southern Pines, and my neck of the woods, Holly Springs. They're awesome for all types of beer and wine. I'm sure they have much Pony Saurus there, and they probably sell tons of Pony Saurus there because they also have a tap room as well, or a beer bar where you can get your beers, all types of wines by the glass. Plus, if you do use the NCF&B promo code, you will get a nice discount. So go online to Triangle Wine Co.
It's the NCFB promo code, Matt.
I don't know why I can't hit that. It should be the NCFNB promo code. You should have to put an
Don't, now you're confusing everyone.
Wouldn't that be better branding, Rochelle?
Well, that's what it says on the shirt.
Thank you. See, we're just confusing everybody, and I'm confused.
So now you have Sum Sum Pita Pockets, right? Now this is a food truck that was utilizing the cookery for its purposes, right, as a commissary, and now you've taken over the business. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Oren was the previous chef and who started it. Moved here with, I'm going to mispronounce his wife's name. It's Yael.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
Nice. Well done.
So Oren and Yael, they both moved here from Israel to move to Durham for Yael to do her PhD at Duke. And they were here about 6 years. And maybe a year ago, Oren, Tsum Tsum was at the brewery a fair amount serving food, and I got to know him pretty well. And I think we would consider him to be a pretty good friend. Mm-hmm. And he started talking about, we're moving back to Tel Aviv. Don't you want a food truck? You should buy my food truck. And I was like, nah, man, I don't want a food truck. I've seen that. That looks like a lot of work. Yeah. Like, those dudes really, I have so much respect for food truck operators. They hustle harder than basically anybody in the business. Mm-hmm. And then he just stayed on me about it, and just I don't know. We maybe drank too many beers together, and it started to seem like a good idea. And
I'd be like, "Oren, shoo."
Yeah, I was going to say.
And he would start to speak in Hebrew, and there was the language barrier, and it seemed
all goes back to the Eastern Europeans.
Well, this would be Israeli, so I can fully. Bang on Israelis being Jewish. This is all, we're hitting all levels. It's like Howard Stern. You hit it all. We're not racist towards anybody. You just knock down everybody.
Yeah. We're just observant of all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So did you have to convince Rochelle in this next venture again?
Of course, it's going to be easy.
It was going to be easy.
Yeah. It's basically going to run itself.
Right.
I will take this moment right now to let's start pitching ideas, Matt. You and I. To the Johnsons and just
I don't want to
Shoo, get out of here.
Yeah, I don't want to give them away on the pod.
We got this taco tube idea.
Yeah, Tony's Taco Tube. It's on Tuesday.
We want to deliver tacos to the ground floor, the corner of Fayetteville and Hargett, by a tube, but made here on the 4th floor. Isn't that a great idea? You just walk by, you order it on your app, you're like, I want 3 tacos, send, and then we're like, gotcha, and then slide it down.
I mean, it sounds like it'll basically run itself.
Yes.
It completely will.
So easy.
Rochelle, are you down?
It's so easy.
We should be having beers at this moment.
Right.
That's how we can make it happen.
I mean, what ended up happening is the more Oren talked to us about this, and we looked at we have all this infrastructure in place. It could operate from the cookery. It can serve at the brewery. We running the cookery. We have an outlet for catering because it is a food truck, but it's also a Mediterranean catering company.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed to make a lot of sense. And then their chicken shawarmas are just so unbelievably good that he was like, well, I'm gonna just have to shut it down. And I was like, well, that can't happen.
And that is called Jewish guilt. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
But even that said, you and he spent some serious time in the transition process so that you could then, or your team could then, replicate or continue on without a big hiccup of flavor and all that. Because that's a big thing too. I mean, if the person that designs it leaves, important. Is it still going to be good? But
Absolutely.
That was, at least reading about it, you guys spent a significant amount of time to understand and fully actualize how those flavors were met and
Absolutely. I have a really bad habit of just saying me and talking about me because I think the whole world revolves around me. But
sure. I'm living in your world.
Truth of the matter is, we have an incredible team of people that work with us that none of what we do could be done without. And Oren, he spent nearly 2 months working with Isaac and Jeff and the other guys on the crew.
If you start saying all their names, I'm going to play you off like it's the
Grammys. And because the way Oren was, Oren is like a very super classic chef. We're like, all right, we're going to do this, and then we're like, okay, so the recipes, and he's like, oh, I don't have any written recipes for anything.
Throw some of this in there.
So that's why it tastes good.
Isaac spent all this time in the kitchen with him and Jeff, and they Isaac would weigh out 1,000 grams of everything in spices and seasoning and everything else, and then Oren would cook, and then he would reweigh them. To come up with okay, this is how because Oren can make it, but literally nobody else could make it.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
So it was super important to us.
We all as creatives need people like Isaac and people like Rochelle in our lives to just take these ideas, unravel them, and put them into practice.
To make us seem smarter than we are.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why it works. It's a good connection. So what are you going to do now? What do we not know? What's coming?
Yeah.
Something else is coming, but we're not quite ready to announce.
Can you give us a genre of it?
No.
Little hints, little something. It's not coming out for 3 weeks, so
Yeah, what are you
Whatever
gonna
it's going to be super easy, and I promise you'll see me next year and I'll say it's running itself.
I do want to say, on your bio, you say this at the very end, and we have about 4 minutes left before we're out of here. You are the co-chair of the Triangle Foster Parent Association, and you two are both licensed foster parents. Mm-hmm. That's really important. I think that people should just know that that's what you're doing. And so you currently foster children now? Is that what's happening?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then what does that mean to be on the chair? How are you involved in that?
Well, actually, the Triangle Foster Parent Association didn't exist for many years. It ended in 2013. And so Kimberly Greer, another foster parent, and I revived it. And we have now finagled getting a really amazing board, and we're becoming a nonprofit called Fostering Families this year. So we provide programming that supports foster parents. We have socials, we have informational events, we have a support group that meets every month. Foster parenting is hard. We need more people to do it. We need more people to provide respite care or to support other foster parents in any way they can. So we're hoping to alleviate a lot of those stresses in order to help the burnout rate.
Did this come from, were you a product of being a foster child, or
no,
is that something from your past?
It isn't, and everyone asks why. Why are you doing this? And even the mom of an infant we fostered, we brought her home from the hospital on day 2. After she was able to go back home, her mom said, "Why are you doing this? This is such an emotional thing to give back, and a child that you're helping to raise."
You fostered a 2-day-old infant?
Yes,
Yeah.
we had never had a kid before, and we brought home
That
someone
is-
else's baby from the hospital.
That's...
Wow.
It was pretty amazing.
You deserve a trophy or a monument just for that.
Yeah.
But it was, and I still get to babysit her and be a part of her life.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I've always wanted kids, but we are not traditional people, and I've always known that we wouldn't have a traditional family, and this is what it is.
As a product of a second-generation family that grew up in an orphanage that my mom grew up in, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, how can people get involved in that if they want to?
They can go to our website. For now, just Google Triangle Foster Parent Association, and
Triangle
you'll get
Foster
there.
Parent Association. Cool.
Yes.
We do have a little gift from our friends over at Bestow Baked Goods.
Oh, man.
They baked you
Look at this.
a beautiful cake.
So this is, it's chocolate cake filled with strawberry buttercream and then vanilla buttercream on the exterior.
Wow.
You
Man.
can see the beers for you.
Wow.
In case you didn't realize,
I like
you
it.
are beer
Please
people, so
thank
now it's a
them.
beer cake. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, Matt, what else we got?
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for doing what you do. Everybody out there, grab a Ponysaurus, go to Dashi, have an event at the Cookery. You will eat and drink very merrily.
You get some pitas, too, while we're at it.
Oh, and Zoom Zoom!
So much.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.